So, welcome everyone. We have Steve Kaufman with us today from the University of Akron, and he is going to be presenting cross-course authentic assessment in an AI world. Please take it away, Steve.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I am very happy to be here today, and thank you for asking me to present today. I, like many of you, have been really scratching my head during faculty consultations with regards to how do I get faculty to stop freaking out about all of this AI stuff and recognize it for what it is. It's a tool, right, that we can use. And so what I wanted to do today was kind of present to you some ideas of how to broach those conversations and give you lots of examples of how we can level up our different types of assessments, our assignments, and the kind of coaching that we would do for faculty when we're trying to think about, well, am I really getting to the crux of the students actually learning something? And how can I make sure with a relatively high degree of confidence that they are in fact the ones authoring the content, right? So let's get into it. Let me clear out that little message here. Okay. So our focus today, um, we need to talk about the speed of disruption and what I'm calling the anti-AI shift, right? And if you've been on LinkedIn a lot, you know there's article after article. I read a lot of what Patrick Dempsey puts out there. We just had him at my campus doing a session on authentic assessment as a keynote speaker, and it was wonderful. And I got a chance to have dinner with him, and we really kind of like talked back and forth about how there's this sentiment among students, seemingly it's not just faculty but students, that don't want AI to be a part of the main mechanism of how we deliver education. I find that interesting. Um, Being a research conference, I have data to share. We actually ran a really wonderful survey on student perceptions of AI and asking them very poignant questions about how it affects their education. So I'm going to share some of those results. I want to give you a process that I think is working. It's a working model, so I'm going to just kind of throw it out there today. I'm sure I'm missing some pieces, but it seems to be working for me this semester. And as you know, anything that you try and like write down permanently, well, we're in a nature where things change by the month, right? And that's kind of where we are. But I also want you to leave with a bunch of examples of how to apply this in your own context from a lot of different disciplines. And feel free to type stuff in the chat. I've got it up in my window and I can address some of those comments kind of as we go through. So don't feel like you have to hold them to the end. So the first thing is, let's talk about speed of disruption, right? We're evolving. We're in this next gen, at 2026. What is it going to be in the second half of 2026, right? I can't even say, let's look to the future to next year. What's going to happen in the next 6 months? We don't know, right? And it's constantly changing. And faculty are stressed about this. Students are stressed about this. Institutions are stressed about this. Certainly as an instructional designer, there's a lot of advice that you're being asked to give, and you may not know all the tools now that are available to you. And I try and keep it in context for my faculty members, right? I share this screenshot a lot with my faculty and say, remember, calculators did not put math faculty, stats faculty out of a job. A search engine did not put researchers out of a job. Google, being in your pocket with a smartphone, didn't put all of these classes on hiatus. ChatGPT, generative AI, it's just the next disruptor. And we have to see it as that. It didn't change the entire game. Education is still education, but it requires more of us as faculty, as instructional designers. So we disrupt traditional teaching, we adapt, education evolves and moves forward. And so we have to move along with it. Abigail, you make a great point that the entire stock market is held up by like 5 to 7 companies, right? It's all about Anthropic and OpenAI and all of these things. And we see the news cycle constantly, unfortunately, reminding us of these things. But I want to say, if you're feeling discouraged, there's hope, right? We are not an army of AI yet. Here's what I find really interesting. I'm seeing more and more articles. I was just pulling stuff for this presentation of what's been happening in the last month, maybe 2 months. Colorado University faculty, staff, and students push back against a university-controlled AI rollout. At my institution, in my state, Ohio State, the flagship institution, put out a big press release, right? Chronicle of Higher Ed picked it up, and they said, we want AI in every single class. And we're like, and the faculty, understandably, like, whoa, slow your roll a little bit here. What does it actually mean? It's buzzworthy, right? It gets Ohio State into the conversation, and makes them appear as if they're leading the way on AI adoption, all these things. But hold on a second. There's some pedagogical implications here, right? Is AI dulling our minds? Harvard Gazette had a really great article and asking different experts and how it affects their disciplines. Wired Magazine says the AI backlash keeps growing stronger. Um, the Atlantic had a great article the other day. I'm a high schooler and AI is demolishing my education, right? Eric is saying we have run into a lot of AI chop shops as well, right? And if there's already this sense that maybe like an online degree or an online program isn't worth as much as a traditional degree or on the ground program, this just makes it even harder to make the case, right? That QM, of course, helping with this process of quality assurance, can help really make great online programs. Um, the thing that I really like, though, so we have students saying that, you know what, I couldn't remember the last time I'd written something by myself, and they themselves are recognizing this. I don't know if any of you caught this article the other day in Fortune magazine. Gen Z is engineering an analog future, and it's at least a $5 billion opportunity. And I love that the top comment, I just had to share it, was, I'm a college professor. Our newspaper just went back to the print edition. Oh, after my own heart. After being online for only a few years, the kids insisted they carry around physical books. There's a thriving vinyl store in town. Have you heard that now the classic iPods, there's a whole submarket for just getting classic iPods because the students are saying and kids are saying, I don't want to be distracted by the internet anymore. I just want a music device. So if you have that iPod Nano or that iPod Shuffle sitting in your desk, crank that out, man. There's a whole market for that, or use it because you might be feeling the exact same way. So I love this. So why do we have to have this conversation right now, right? We know AI tools are widely accessible. They're easy to use. They're improving faster than our traditional assessment practices, right? Unfortunately, tech moves faster than education moves, right? We always talk about higher ed like it's a cruise ship, right? When you're trying to have a hand on the wheel and you're trying to move that cruise ship to go in a different direction. And that's what all of us flag wavers are doing in our professions as being in online support or being online faculty. And many faculty are experiencing enforcement fatigue, right? Detectors don't work reliably. Policies vary by course. Just in the same department, I have one faculty member that's 100% let's go AI, and the next section, luck of the draw, no AI whatsoever, which is really confusing, right? You might have faculty at your institution that kind of feel that way. Students get mixed signals, and that brings us to the core question behind the project. What should assessment actually demonstrate in an AI-enabled world? If we answer that well, many of these integrity concerns become design problems instead of policing problems, right? It's baked into everything. It's inside of Word. If you're using the Microsoft Suite, Copilot, that little Copilot thing pops up all the time, tells me, oh, your slide isn't good enough, Steve. Maybe I can spice this up a little bit. Are you sure you want to say it that way? I mean, this is just Grammarly on steroids, right? So we face that with integrity enforcement challenges, inconsistent expectations, and what should assessments actually show? So let's unpack that a little bit. Now, we have to acknowledge that students are keenly aware that AI's impact can degrade the value of their degree. And what I think is even more important to note is that they know when they're not learning. We have spent a decade or more teaching metacognitive strategy. It's baked into every single first year experience. Like, how do you know you're learning? The thinking behind the thinking, the learning behind the learning, right? So this is an important thing to acknowledge. And I think at first glance, it's easy to say, I don't really believe that until we surveyed our students. So what did my Akron students said? We put this up right in our learning management system, up in the corner of Brightspace, anonymous survey. Hey, tell us what you think about all of this AI stuff going on. And so here's what they said. Are students even using AI? How often? We're right around 370 students here across all majors, undergraduate, graduate, every department under the sun. How often do you use generative AI tools for academic work? The majority said never, which I thought, okay, are you really being honest here? But as I reveal some of these statistics, I think you'll be interested. Some will say rarely, some will say sometimes. Very few in most cases category. So I appreciate that, right? Contrary to what I would have initially thought. And I say that because when I'm on the instructional designer side and faculty members are telling me, Steve, 100% of my papers are AI generated. Well, hold on. Maybe not. Maybe they're not all AI generated. Maybe the students just know that they're being held to a much tighter and stronger and wider magnifying glass, and they know that what they have to produce has to be really good, right? But that can sometimes seem contrary. Are students talking about AI? In the last year, how many of your faculty have explicitly discussed AI use? I was very, very happy that most of my faculty talked about it. Um, I don't know how you could not, but I could see how it could be like a third rail issue where maybe students were not getting feedback. And certainly, we've given, like many of your institutions, we've given guidance to faculty members. And when I say guidance, I use that very loosely because we have a paragraph on a web page that says what students need to know. And there's a like maybe 5 or 6 sentences that basically just say it's at the discretion of the faculty member, but it's required language in every single syllabus, right? Whether or not we expand on that is another question. Are we clear? How clear are your instructors about when and how AI can be used? The majority said, yeah, we're very clear about it, which is great. That means the training that we're putting out is working, right? And we have these conversations, we have these webinars. You come to research conferences to figure out how am I going to frame this with faculty and conversely, how do I frame this with my students, which is great. Have you ever felt unsure whether using AI might help or harm your learning? And majority of the students said, yeah, both. I've wondered if AI tools might help or harm my learning. Am I, again, they're being very thoughtful and recognizing, am I really getting it? Or am I just using it more to regurgitate what the assignment instructions were? Or yes, I've wondered if AI tools might hurt my learning. So the majority, luckily, are very intrinsically motivated to think deeply about these things. So theme-wise, in an AI-enabled world, faculty should help me learn what? We're asking the students, what do you want from your faculty? Well, the number one response, about half of the respondents said, how and when to use AI responsibly. Is it a tool that I can use to do really cool media in my class to help me learn the topic? Or is it a crutch that promotes laziness? These students generally saw, these were some of the comments that came in. These students generally see AI as helpful aid when guiding, understanding, or organizing thinking, but not as something that should do the assignment for them. I was very reassured to hear that. They want to know how to use it properly, and that's where the training piece comes in, right? My faculty members really don't, the majority, I will say that, easily 95% don't really go beyond prompting. They don't get into really anything more technical than that. Not even media creation, just basic prompt. Give me an idea for this assignment. Please fill out this rubric for me, which is an excellent use of AI, by the way. Don't take all this time building the tic-tac-toe board. Totally farm that out. But the students are looking for guidance on how to use it. So how do we think about building that into our curriculum, right? The working world outside of academia says students have to know this stuff. So we can't not acknowledge it. Use AI for research support, summarizing sources, generating practice questions, clear expectations, when and when not to use that. Really great. Okay. We asked the second thing that came up, about a third of the students said, I really want to use it to think for myself, preserve critical thinking and higher order thinking. I want my faculty member to tell me how to do this. A very strong theme is that faculty should prioritize independent thinking, reasoning, problem solving, not just content delivery via AI. And unfortunately, you were all probably using a learning management system, Blackboard, Canvas, um, Desire to Learn, whatever it is, Brightspace, and they're all baking in these AI tools now, which are going to pre-create modules and pre-create content and pre-create quizzes and all these things. And you're left wondering, well, what is there left for me to do? But there is an opportunity. Okay. So that some of the comments were think for myself, use my mind more, develop critical higher order thinking skills. They are understanding that the superficial stuff on the first couple levels of Bloom's isn't enough anymore, right? That's what AI is good at, but we can do better. Avoid becoming second-hand thinkers. I loved when that comment came up. The third thing they said was option to learn without AI. Can I have AI-free spaces? I was floored when they said that. I'm like, really? Like, okay, like, yeah, we could definitely do that because that's back to what I'm used to doing, right? Substantial number of responses called for little to no AI in their learning. Some write simply, I don't want AI, get rid of it, ban it. AI should not be used in education, especially higher education. Surprising to hear that, especially given what the job market is telling students. Students ask for paper tests, paper and pencil exams, AI-free assignments to ensure that assessments measure their own understanding and prevent the unauthorized use. So they see it as a leveling thing. We talk all the time about learning equity. right? And whether or not students have access. If I have a pro ChatGPT account, I have a leg up on all of my other students because they might just be using the free version and they have limits on how much they can prompt, right? So there is an equity issue here. And if I would take that off the table, it's more of a fair playing field. My mind versus your mind. Several emphasize they've chosen not to use AI and want changes that should not make things harder for students who do not use AI. Yes, absolutely getting to that equity thing. And Maddie's saying in the chat, I teach digital literacy course and I've integrated AI to teach AI literacy and risk assessment as well as AI partnership with rather than, hold on a second, replacement. This semester, I've seen a high rate of students requesting, there we go, opt-outs for AI-driven assignments. Really great. Students are also mentioning the environmental impact, right? This next generation, they're going to deal, I'm sorry, I'm holding this up. We're going to deal with all the plastic bottles and all of the horrible things that we're doing to the environment, right? It all rolls downhill to my kids. And so they're being very conscious about water use and whether or not they're going to use the. You can actually go into Google and turn off the automatic AI summary that comes up on the screen. And I've seen a lot of conferences talk about, hey, turn that off because you're think about how many gallons of water it took just to summarize all those web pages. I just want to just Google something. Can I just do that? So this theme is often tied to a strong concern that AI is making students dumber or harms learning goals or kills critical thinking. And yes, yes, and yes, that's exactly what we're talking about, right? That's what we're concerned with. They also talked about pacing support and human learning environments, right? Requests that faculty help me learn step by step, as many courses are really fast paced. It's amazing to me in academia, like our goal is let's make all of these courses shorter. And I'm like, okay, you're going to take a 15-week course and you're going to delineate it down to 8 weeks, then 5 weeks, then 3 weeks. It's a fire hose, right? 15 weeks sometimes doesn't even feel like enough time for some of these courses, right? It's all get them through the door so fast. And the temptation is let's just cut content, right? Which waters down their education. So what can we do to address some of those things? So in summary, kind of for that first part, the students are asking to help have faculty develop strong, independent, real-world skills, critical thinking, communication, ethical judgment, but also learning how and whether to use AI as a limited, transparent tool rather than a substitute. I love that. Um, the second question we asked was if faculty redesigned assessments. Okay, we're talking about authentic assessment in this presentation for an AI-enabled world. What should they keep and what should they change? This was really interesting. Number one, they wanted provide AI guidance. When can I use it? When can I not? How should I cite it? All of those things. Allow limited AI for brainstorming. Clearly tell me that in the syllabus. Require transparency and set boundaries for that use. They also said increase academic integrity. Is there a way to ban it so it's a level playing field for all of the other students? Stricter policies and consequences for catching students cheating using AI. Stronger safeguards. That sometimes is an expense because detection is a tool that is something that you can certainly integrate into your system. I'm not a big fan of just going with detection. I don't think that's the direction we should be heading. I think responsible use is where we should be heading, but we'll get to that in a minute. Format changes, more in-class writing, oral defenses and presentations, proctored exams, drafts, process checkpoints. I'm going to hammer on process a little bit later in the presentation because that I think is really the key thing. I used to recommend oral defenses. And then I read an article by Patrick Dempsey that said, I'm not qualified to give oral defenses because what are you actually measuring? Their ability to present the information or the actual information themselves? And if you're not a great public speaker, you can see how that could water down somebody's grade. And I said, okay, point well taken. Before I would recommend that, we're going to have to kind of suss that out and QM would say varied types of assessments. So do we build into courses opportunities to practice those skills? So I'd feel more confident that an oral defense is something my students are prepared to deliver. They talked about authentic applied personal assessments, right? We have the ability. Here's the thing that we always throw away. You remember that introduce yourself discussion forum in every single class? How many of your faculty members use that to ask really great personal questions about their motivations and what they want to learn in this class? Quick show of hands. A few, right? Not everybody's hand goes up because often what happens with an introduce yourself discussion forum is tell me where you're from. Why are you in this class? Because it's required. And you get the point, right? It's the throwaway assignment. because QM also says we should have an opportunity for students to introduce themselves, right? It's not just in the rubric, but it's also an important thing that you want students to do. But how can I take that information and personalize the examples? So when I see personal assessments come up, it leads me to believe that I should be taking some of the information students are giving me and contextualizing my examples every semester to make it personal for my students. More real world application, more projects, more scenarios. They're asking for more work, guys. Like, yeah, all right, that's fantastic. So across themes, there's a visible tension, right, between students who want AI constrained or prohibited to protect fairness, but students who want AI acknowledged and taught responsibly because they expect it in the work they're going to do outside of academia. Absolutely. Last area, what makes you feel seen and included in a classroom discussion about technology and the future of work? Students emphasized feeling heard when instructors acknowledge their points, respond thoughtfully, encourage questions. This is all RSI kind of stuff, right? Am I being listened to? Am I being acknowledged? That really helps. Relevance to my goals. Well, there's the big one, right? I'm teaching a class on theory. How can I apply that theory and make it a real world, tangible thing that I can pin to my board and say, I'm going to recall that a little bit later. I'll brag a little bit. The other day, I was trying to prop up a wall in my basement, and I totally used the Pythagorean theorem to figure out how long the board had to be to prop up that wall. So thank you to my high school math teacher for getting me through a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? I actually used that. That was nice. Assignment clarity, clear expectations, demonstrations, practical examples, and opportunities to practice, right? Giving that feedback, right? So summative feedback, formative feedback, really building that throughout your course design. So here's what's really great. Students wrote an unusual length and was really specific. 928 comments we got back out of these 370 students, and about a fifth of them were 40 words or more. I mean, they felt very strongly about this. I would encourage you to ask some of these questions. Just throw it up in a whatever polling software you use. Put it in your LMS and just ask the question. You'll be surprised what you get back, and it's great talking points with my faculty. Students wanted a balanced approach, protect academic integrity while preparing for AI in the workplace. Students want assessments that demonstrate reasoning, application, and process, and students are concerned about job displacement. 53 mentions of this, environmental impact, 34 mentions, and of course their privacy, right? We need to be concerned about having them sign up for all of these things. Remember, if it's free, you're the product, right? So we have to be really careful about what we put in front of students. So there's a little bit of the research that we've been doing here at Akron that I wanted to share with all of you. Now, this is all to say that we have to be really careful not to waste time focusing on the wrong things. And immediately during my consultations with faculty, it's, I need to ban this. I need to detect this. I need to have punitive policies in place. And I think it's easy to fall in that mode because there's always a tool out there. You know, there's the respondices out there, there's the lockdown browsers, there's all those things, right? Which are not necessarily bad, right? We want to make sure that things are a level playing field for students, but outright bans and just using detection for the sake of detection doesn't get to the crux of the problem, which is authentic learning. It's a balancing act, right? Ultimately, this is the concern. And this is what I share with faculty all the time, the difference between using AI as a tool and just farming out your knowledge and your headspace to a machine. But here's the thing I want to keep in context. I tell my students, it's okay to use AI in my class because you have access to create amazing things. Nathaniel Whitmore from the AI Daily Brief, it's a fantastic podcast. You should subscribe to it. He talks about how it's an opportunity creation technology. Think of it in that context, doing more with the same or much, much more with just a little more. For like 17 bucks a month, right? I can get Claude Pro. For 20 bucks a month, I can get this. It can be an investment, right? More people will be creating more with the help of AI. So I tell my students, you have to tell me and disclose when you're going to use it, how you're using it, what you got out of it, and but I also ask the question, tell me how what you created represents your original thinking. That is the key question. And know that if and when you use it, I get to hold you to a higher standard. It is not enough for my student to put in a crappy PowerPoint anymore because you have all these great tools that will make you an awesome PowerPoint. Megan showed me a Gamma at the last QM Connect conference. And I'm like, oh, this is such a cool tool. Not accessible, but we're we're working on it, right, Megan? We're both laughing and scratching our heads at that one. So here's the page right out of my syllabus, okay? And I'll add this to the resources site because I don't think I linked to it directly. But I have a website that I use that I believe Northern Kentucky University put out, which is just a little checkbox thing. Do you allow this? Do you not allow this? In what context do you do this? So, right up at the top of the screen, that's what the university gives me. I added the three-quarters of the rest of it. This policy applies to these following tools. The policy applies under these conditions. The following processes are in place. And my rationale, right? I say my rationale for my policy is that students have shown themselves to be responsible, effective learners. The assessments have value, regardless of using chat and generative AI. And students know about the risks and the benefits because I tell them that, right? Here's a really interesting opportunity to see hallucination in action. And I show them how bad information can very easily creep into a report. And I give them the rationale for restricting AI use as well, right? The course focuses on developing fundamental skills that AI tools will skip over, or the assessment design requires independent problem solving. So I clearly state that upfront in the interest of transparency for my students. If your AI policy isn't at least a page long, you might be missing something. Um, so AI has presented this really unique opportunity to us, right? It's the next disruptor. So how do I take all that stuff that I just shared about what students said and turn that into better assessments? That is the key question. Well, first, you need a working definition because when I ask faculty members, what does authentic assessment mean? And I get responses like, well, my students perform as expected on my exams, or the homework covers my topics well, there's alignment there, but it doesn't go much deeper than that. Can I get like some head nods? Like that's oftentimes what you hear when you're talking about authentic assessment. Like, huh? Of course it's authentic, right? They're getting good grades. And that's not their fault. That's just how we've always done things. It's really easy to import a publisher pack and play the tweaking game and just, adjust and not really think too deeply about it. This on top of a full teaching load and service and research, I get it. Okay, but you need a common definition. Here's my crack at it. I tell faculty authentic assessment refers to the evaluation of student learning through tasks that reflect real world challenges, require the application of knowledge and skills in a meaningful context, and encourage original thought. These assessments often emphasize process. How do you surface process, problem solving, and transfer of learning beyond the classroom? It's not defined by the absence of AI, right? Authentic assessment doesn't mean no AI. It is defined by whether students are doing meaningful intellectual work that reveals learning. So how do you operationalize that? This is what I think I've come up with. I'm just going to throw this out like nailing Jello to the wall. It might change after this presentation or based on some of the comments that you have. But I noticed that I was giving the same advice about authentic assessment. And then I realized I was going kind of through the same Socratic questions, walking in through the same coaching during faculty consultations. So I tried to pull out some gems out of all of the notes that I have. And I think I got it down to four basic things. So the first one is to clarify and then engage, identify, and how do you make learning visible? How do you ensure that visibility? Clarify, engage, identify, and visibility. Okay, so let's dive into this. So when it comes to clarify, here's what I'm looking for. My first step is let's clarify the learning objective in a realistic context, right? And here's the thing, like all of you in this call, you're probably QMers in some capacity. You know how to write a measurable learning objective. I don't have to explain it to you. You could farm that out to AI, frankly. But being in the QM family, we know that a course is only as good as its measurable learning objectives. And I think we have to pay more attention now to context, right? How do these objectives and benefits, skill sets that students ultimately graduate with? How does it benefit those? We sometimes address this, but not all the time. And now with AI being in play, we should think about how we pull these objectives together at a deeper level. What should students be able to know or be able to do? Certainly, we've always asked that, but is it going beyond just recall and really getting to higher order thinking skills, creation, application, communication, transfer? And can I encourage faculty members to bake the real world context directly into the learning objective? So, this assignment is meant to help students demonstrate their ability to what? And then the missing part is in what context? That's where I feel like we can go deeper. And I think that's what's going to help us answer this AI question, right? Because I'm getting them to think about it at another level. The second step is in engage. Okay, so when it comes to engaging, what does that actually mean? Check the level of authentic engagement. And what I mean by authentic engagement is once we have a good objective, ask whether the current assignment creates the engagement. Like, what's my onus to do this? Should the students allow them to actually exercise their judgment I want to know why they chose a particular answer, not just what ChatGPT said. So I ask these questions. Professor, does the task ask students to apply the learning or just really repeat it? Are you like so many discussion forums are just like, let's summarize the article. No, not enough. Someone's going to nail it out of the park, and then that's where the conversation ends. There's nothing to discuss. And that's been something we've been trying to uh, dispel and revise for years. And we still do it. I still see it in classes all the time. Does it involve a realistic audience? Can I take that question and contextualize it for a particular population, right? That puts a real world spin on it. Does it require judgment or decision making? You have option A, B, and C on the buffet. Which one do I choose? Putting that back on the students and making that personal really helps with authenticity. Does it ask students to connect ideas to a case, scenario, problem, product, something that they maybe have encountered in the shopping aisle? Could the same assignment be completed reasonably well without understanding the course? And you know what I'm getting at here, right? Is it, do I really need to know this stuff, or would an AI answer be sufficient? And that's really, that last question is especially helpful when you've got AI at play and available to everybody. If a student could produce a decent looking answer with minimal understanding and not really knowing how that formula works or not really knowing how that theory is applied, we have to do a redesign. We owe it to our students to do a redesign. So here's an example. This is an objective I was given for a course that I'm teaching. Okay, I teach training and development, a 400 level class. Basically, it teaches ADDIE to HR students. Okay, the ADDIE model, good old ADDIE. The previous assignment was to participate in a single discussion topic and compare and contrast learning theories. And undoubtedly, right, someone came up with the textbook answer, and that would lead to nobody else wanting to offer any sort of differing opinion because I offered praise because RSI, I want to tell them very early on, yep, you're right on the right track. I love that. So how do I make that more authentic? Okay, let's rework it. A first year student success program, give this as an example. A first year student success program wants to improve participation in academic coaching, something that my students at the senior level probably don't even remember their first year student success experience, right? But they all had to go through it. Based on the motivation theories we had in the class, which theory would provide the strongest foundation for redesigning this program, right? They all complain that they have to take that 1 credit hour class. They say it was a huge waste of time. They all say it. It's the scavenger hunt on campus. Where's the advising office? So what I want them to do is think deeper, recommend a strategy based on that theory, explain why it's the best fit for the context, and explain why the two other theories, there's the crux. Don't just tell me which one you picked, but why are the other two not appropriate? Judgment. Okay. Include a short design note describing the assumptions you made and how you reached your decision. What examples from your own training experiences? Maybe you're working at a restaurant and you were trained. Maybe you're working at an Amazon delivery center, fulfillment center, and you had received some sort of corporatized training. How do those trainings, can you recognize what the learning theory was behind them? And I guarantee there is one, right? Because somebody was hired and paid a lot of money to come up with those trainings. So the reason why this works is because students have to do more than that initial objective of compare and contrast. They have to choose, justify, defend. And I think that's a better example of authentic learning. My third step, identify. Okay, so let's get back into identify. Identify what makes the assignment authentic. And this is hard. This is really the thought experiment that you have to help faculty members get through. And it's not easy because it's not something that's really natural. It's really hard to turn the lens back on yourself and be like, is this really assessing what I think it's assessing? Faculty often say an assignment's authentic because it's a project, right? They're producing an artifact. Creating is the highest level of Bloom's taxonomy, but that's not enough on its own. We need to include the process. How did you get to that really awesome portfolio piece? An assessment is more likely to be authentic when you have a realistic problem, scenario, case. Maybe they're writing the case. Maybe they're using AI to generate a case and they're trying to unpack it. A clear purpose beyond just turn this in for points, right? How many times have you heard your students say, how much is this worth points? Where is this in the grade book? What is involved in my participation grade? That's all they care about is just, is it worth points? And I tell faculty all the time, if you want students to do it, all that stuff that you marked as optional is really great to make you feel, better about the course, but they ain't going to do it unless it's worth points. It's just the sad reality. So how do you restructure even your grade book to get them to produce more artifacts for you? Do you define an audience? Do you have them make choices and defend decisions? Is there application of knowledge to something new that they may not have thought of? Can they synthesize multiple skills that you've learned or cultivated in the class, right? Think about how we talk about in our instructional design theories the concept of scaffolding. Can I bring all those pieces together to really advance that and what they're producing? Evidence of process, not just the final product, reflection, revision, that resembles real disciplinary work, real problems that you're trying to solve, right? A useful faculty prompt that I use to start that conversation. What exactly about this assignment reflects how knowledge is used in your major, in the career fields that we say your students are prepared to do? Um, that can come across as a little judgy, so you have to really build your rapport with faculty, but it's an essential question. In fact, here are some of the questions that I ask. Okay, so here's some language. Screenshot this. You've got the PowerPoint already in the thing, but screenshot this and keep this because I find that these are really good conversation starters. So sometimes faculty need help naming why an assessment is authentic. They don't maybe have the language that you have being across all of these courses that you work on. This assessment is authentic because students must apply course concepts to a realistic situation, or students are asked to make and justify decisions rather than simply repeat information. Jason, you're asking, can you please drop the PowerPoint again? It's in the CVent Center. You'll see it on the right under resources on the session. You can download it after. The task reflects work that could occur in professional, civic, or disciplinary contexts. Students must show their thinking through drafts, reflection, explanation. The assignment allows for original responses, not just one predictable answer, i.e., the problem with discussion topics. The assessment emphasizes transfer of learning, right? How do I get that to really stick with my students? And if they can answer some of these and speak to these, that's really great. I plop that into my chat when I'm talking with faculty members, and I just say, what would be your response to this? And I think it just helps set the mindset of thinking in the broader context of really surfacing process and really surfacing those authentic experiences. Okay. Yes. And Karen, I love what you said here, allowing more than one attempt so it's not so high stakes. Yes, absolutely. All of my reading quizzes in my class, because I assign 12 chapters to read in my class, and of course students don't do the reading, so I do a reading quiz. I set it to it's 5% of the final grade. It's set to unlimited attempts because I don't care if they cheat. I want them to open the book, look it up or scroll or search or whatever it is, and take the quiz a million times because you know what that gets rid of at the end of the semester? I'm so glad you said that, Karen. It gets rid of all of those 11th hour emails saying, Steve, Professor Steve, I have an 88% in the class. Do you think I might be able to get to an A minus? Sure, you can. Go back and take those unlimited quizzes and show me that you have the knowledge and you earned it. Don't you feel better earning it rather than me just giving it to you? They don't want to answer that question, but they go back and they take those quizzes. So yes, low stakes assessment is really, really helpful. Now my last one is visibility. And I will say, I'm working on a symposium for QM Connect, and the entire symposium, 4 hours, is going to be focused on making learning visible. So there's my plug. If you want to come to QM Connect, come to my symposium because we're going to dive into this. I got really great materials here. So this is where the AI conversation becomes productive, right? Instead of relying on no AI, right, the banning philosophy, build in opportunities for students to show how they learned, how they thought, how they made decisions. I love when they give me multiple iterations of proposals and plans. I like when they tell me what did they actually prompt? How is it right or wrong? Why did you make that decision? Justify what happened in the conversation. So annotating their notes, tools like Perusal are really great for that. If you have a tool where you can do social annotation, it could be a Google Doc. It doesn't even have to be something fancy like Perusal or Hypothesis or one of those other websites. You can just use a Google Doc and say, give me annotated notes, leave comments. I will hop in and give you feedback. The decision log is one that I actually use in my class. Okay, you told me that you used ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or whatever. Why did you ask that question in that way? Why did you choose this path? It gave you three options based on what you copied and pasted into the log. Why did you go with this one? What about that was interesting to you? How are you making that personal, right? How are you tying that back to the theory? I want to know those things. So I love having that little bit of reflection on those choices. Having a revision memo, right? Revision history is fantastic, right? It's baked into Microsoft Word. It's baked into Google Docs. I know who contributed what at what time, which is really great and validating for those group assignments that students hate. And they say they don't like group assignments because why? There's always one person on the the team that doesn't do anything, right? I can see the revision log, right? That kind of takes that argument off the table. Having them give brief defenses, I love poking holes in their arguments. Someone told, I can't remember what book I read it in, but it was something like the boss of any organization, their sole job is to ask great questions. And if you can answer all the great questions, proceed as planned, right? So my job as the instructor in my class is to ask them really good questions. And once they've satisfied everything, they've answered all the things that I poke holes into, I feel confident that they're really presenting to me their authentic learning, which is great. Having peer feedback and response, building that into your course design, also really great. Sarah's saying I found it. Oh, never mind. That's the resources stuff. Okay. These do not all need to be used at once. This is not the formula of like put in every single one of these things in your class. Pick a couple that you think are low-hanging fruit that you can really help a faculty member who might be struggling with how to rework these assignments or these assessments, and get them to think, what evidence can they produce that would help me see their thinking, right? Not just the fancy PowerPoint or the 5-page paper or whatever it is, right? How do I surface the thinking? That is a thought exercise unto itself. Okay, so here's an example. I chaired a conference at Akron last month on authentic assessment, and we had an industry panelist, and he said, the world outside of academia is not a 5-paragraph essay. We want to give students real problems and let industry partners decide and provide feedback as to whether or not the students are coming up with viable solutions. Yes, that corporate collegiate partnership we always talk about. Yes, of course. So we see this. Write a 5-page paper summarizing leadership theory. What could we do to go deeper? Analyze a real leadership challenge in the workplace, someplace where you work probably. Community, organization. Recommend an approach using a couple of theories that you learned about leadership theory. Megan has a really great workshop, plug for Megan, on becoming a really fantastic online learning leader. It's offered through QM. Check it out. How you evaluate the alternatives and how any AI tools were used or not used. And so it's the same content, right? They're still producing an artifact that I can judge, but there's a stronger level of authenticity here. Oh, thank you, Megan, for putting the plug in there. Appreciate that. Okay. Um, so I keep telling faculty, think process over product. Here is a blitz of ideas that you can use. Okay, so here's an example from one of my natural science biology courses. Describe the process of photosynthesis and its major stages. That's not an interesting assignment at all. Okay, let's contextualize this. Let's do it this way. A community organization wants to create an educational guide for local residents on why plant health matters in urban spaces. A very common thing. Akron is an urban campus, so we have urban gardens. Develop a short explanation of photosynthesis for a non-scientific audience. So how do I take something technical I'm learning in a biology class and ELI 5, explain like I'm 5 to someone who may not be a biology major or someone who's really not familiar. Which environmental factors, light, water, temperature, soil quality, would be the most important to monitor first? So we're giving them some basic guidance, but they have to think deeper about how they would explain it and how you come up with a presentation. So why is this authentic? Students have to apply scientific knowledge in context, adapt to the audience, whatever audience I give them, and make a reasoned recommendation, right? They have to make a judgment about it. So they can use AI for that, right? But they have to think about what the audience will be and justify why that is. Lisa, you're asking, are you using AI to help get from the before and after versions of the assignment? And if so, do you provide an AI disclosure statement? Sometimes it's 100% generated by the faculty. Sometimes what I'm doing is just talking it out with them and typing it up and seeing how it sticks. And sometimes we are typing it into AI. AI disclosure is in the syllabus policy, and I encourage faculty members to disclose when they are using it too. Because if we're asking them to disclose, it's only fair that we disclose. But I tell faculty members it is not appropriate to take a named assignment from a student and upload it to ChatGPT and say, grade it for me. Not cool. That's what you're the subject matter expert, and there's no real way to make it any shorter. I'd love to say farm out all your grading and focus on other things that are important to you, but yeah, there's an ethics issue there, right?
Hey,
Here,
Steve,
yeah, go
I
ahead,
just
Barbara.
wanted to let you know there's a couple of questions in the chat that it might be good to go through because we've only got about a minute left.
Oh gosh, okay.
Let me
Yeah,
just kind of go through them
yeah,
where I can run through them pretty quickly. So,
yep,
somebody asked if the survey results include online students.
yes,
Okay.
yep,
Um,
absolutely.
Alrighty. And somebody asked, are you restricting them to certain tools?
We do not have a university subscribed system for AI. So
Okay.
it's really just kind of luck of the draw per faculty and per student as to what they want to use or not use.
Okay. And Jane asked if you also teach that AI as a yes and in that
Mhm.
it's been built to affirm.
That is what we are trying to shift the mindset to, is kind of this, yes, AI is something we acknowledge you all have access to, and there are good ways of using it in this class, but let's show you how. That's the missing piece, is how do I teach my students how to use it in a way without reiterating the same talking points about hallucination that they've heard in every single class, right? So that's I think important.
Okay, all righty. Well, we are to the end of our time.
Oh
If
no.
you have like a moment or two that you want to finish up, that would be fine.
Sure can. This is my longer form example, so I am gonna tell you to go to the PowerPoint and check it out. But basically what we were doing is in a social work class, we have them do a privilege walk. And the privilege walk is get the students to line up in a row and answer questions about what privileges they may have or not have. And the question I was posed to faculty is, how do you make that an online assignment that you don't want to use AI for? So I created an opportunity mountain, and I asked the students to tell me a little bit about their background in the introduce yourself discussion. So they're actually using that discussion. And then they had to anonymously answer the questions and place a flag on where they think they are in terms of privilege. And the point of the assignment is to help the students think about where they are in context with their peers. Because that's the gut check of like, I didn't realize I had so much privilege. Or maybe I didn't realize I was so far behind other students just because of circumstance, just because, for whatever reason, right? And there's a million things that go into that. So the students are reporting, I really like this. There wasn't a need to farm this out to AI because I had to talk about myself, my background, my context, which was really great. So there's some other examples of before and after. Here's a business analytics example. This is actually my last slide. So I'll just say, um, having students figure out, like in a math, stats, or business analytics class, how are you going to best explain that concept to somebody? How do you take the data and make it understandable, right? I have this problem with my engineering faculty members. It's like, how do you communicate then something that's highly technical in a way that's meaningful for the novices in the room? That's hard. So, my last slide. Authentic assessment is not about creating assignments that AI can't touch. It's about designing learning experiences that AI can complete for students in a meaningful way, beyond just regurgitating the term and definition kind of stuff, without the student still having to think, decide, apply, and explain. Um, Thank you. I appreciate all of you coming to my presentation. I had a blast. Just a note, next Friday, I'm doing the session that I did last year at QM Connect called Authentic Assessment in the Age of AI, where I dig into a lot more of these things. And I'll give you all of the QR codes and all of the things to actually build your AI policy and some of these things that'll really help. So there's the link in the PowerPoint, and I can drop that into the chat later. But thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of the conference.
Thanks so much to everyone, and thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat with you.